What's up, fam? Tommy, Modern Canine. So, today's day 3 of my 90-day challenge of content or videos. And with it being Wilson's 5-year anniversary of going over the Rainbow Bridge, I figured today would be a perfect day to talk about service dogs. Um, so, for those of that don't know, Wilson was my service dog. He pretty much started the whole modern canine thing for me. I got him pretty quickly after I got out of the Marine Corps. When I was in California, I reached out to a veteran owned dog training company that trained service dogs for veterans, and they took my information. We did a survey, figured out a bunch of stuff, and then about 2 weeks after I reached out to them, they said that they had found a German Shepherd at a local shelter that fit the criteria for what I was looking for, and what they thought would make a good service dog. So we went out to Sacramento. I was living in Napa, California at the time, and we did a meet and greet with the dog at the shelter. Cool dog, super good personality, great temperament, and I said, "Yeah, I'm down. Let's go. Let's make it happen." So I paid him. I want to say it was like $1,500, maybe $2,000, and got the process started. So mind you, I was not a dog trainer at the time. I owned a firearms training and consulting company called EDC Solutions. Had no real dog experience other than pet dogs growing up, and never knew anything at this time about service dogs truly, because none of my friends had them and none of the guys I had served with had any. So all new, brand new to the game, green as all could be. Um, they said, okay, we'll reach out to you after the training's done to do your training. So about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call. Hey, your dog's ready. He's trained to be a service dog, and you need to schedule when you can come out and do your lesson and get everything finalized. I was like, cool. So I showed up, and again, not knowing anything, I personally thought 2 weeks was fairly short for a service dog, but I didn't know anything at the time. So drove out, spent about an hour with these guys learning how to do some basic obedience. They worked a place command on a tree stump, which was what they used instead of a place cot. Um, and the majority of my lesson was putting the dog on the tree stump and having him sit there for about 30 to 40 minutes while we talked about the dog and my plans and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't really get a whole lot of education on service dogs. I knew nothing about the ADA at this time. They gave me a little ID card that they had printed off that said service dog and his name and stuff like that. And then the whole contract for him being my service dog through them, which I had to sign. And basically they shook my hand and said, hey, if he doesn't work out, let us know. We'll find another dog. It won't cost you anything more. I was like, okay. So drove back to Napa. I got my brand new service dog. I'm psyched. I'm excited. Super cool dog. And took him for his first walk. And some neighbor's dog came out and he completely annihilated this dog. So I'm freaking out. My wife at the time was expecting, and I'm like, this isn't going to work. Like, this can't happen. So I called the organization, and they're like, oh, well, he's bonded to you now, and, he's your dog. So we did a couple more lessons, which more or less was my dog standing on top of a tree stump and then parading a bunch of dogs past and saying, oh, well, he's not dog aggressive. And again, me at the time, I know nothing. So I'm like, okay, well, apparently I'm stupid or whatever. So take him for a couple more walks, massive aggression towards other dogs. And I basically told this organization to F off because they obviously didn't care. So I found a canine handler locally to me and was like, hey man, can you give me some pointers on things I can do to make my dog neutral, because he's supposed to be my service dog and this isn't going to work. So I spent about a year rehabbing Wilson and did it more or less on my own with very little guidance from this canine handler. And the rest is pretty much history. The dog became fantastic. Traveled across the country with me. When I was in the firearms industry, he touched a lot of other veterans, helped them through rough times that they were going through. And then moving back to Missouri and getting in the dog world, he became my demo dog. He became my dog that I used for aggressive rehabilitation because he was so neutral at this point towards other dogs that the aggression didn't bother him if a dog started showing aggression towards him. And then obviously at this point he was fairly old. So 5 years ago, Kayla, my wife, and I got together. We were dating, and the first time that she had come down to visit me, she gave me a call and she's like, "Hey, Wilson's stuck in the bathroom." And I was like, well, he's 11, 12 years old. He doesn't move very quick anymore. He's probably just hanging out. The tile in the bathroom's probably cold. He'll get up and move. I got home from work, which was fairly late, and I came in the house. He had moved to the bed that she was laying on, and when I went to go pet him, he was soaking wet. And I figured, well, he's just having a bad day. And again, this dog had never gone to the bathroom in the house. Super clean dog. Tried to get him off the bed. He wouldn't get off the bed, wouldn't move, barely picked up his head. So I slid him off the bed and he immediately collapsed. And I knew at that point, I had been dog trained at this point for about 5 years, that something wasn't right. He didn't have any mobility. His whole body was pretty much limp. So I carried him outside, tried to get him to go to the bathroom. He fell over again, and I assumed that he probably had a stroke, and it wasn't fair to him to keep asking more of him. So drove him to the vet, and we put him down because I didn't want him to suffer anymore. But Wilson was such a special dog to me. He not only helped me, but he helped a lot of veterans. He showed a lot of the veteran buddies that I served with the power that a service dog has for someone. Coming from me at a few points in my life where, I was thinking suicide, I was drinking myself to death. The dog really helped pull me out of those moments and gave me something to hold on to continue pushing forward. Between going through a very, very rough divorce, having my oldest stay in California, transitioning back to Missouri, not knowing what to do with myself, all those life changes were just very, very hard on me. And even coming back to my hometown, where I would assume that I would know people that I grew up with were either not here, they're in jail, they're dead. My family at the time were pretty split. They didn't do a lot of stuff together. And after spending so much time in the military and out of the state, a lot of my connection with my family had dissipated because, well, Tommy's not here, so we don't need to tell Tommy about stuff anymore, or just however that rolls. Not that my family doesn't love me or anything. It's just when you don't see someone for so long and they only come in a couple times a year, you forget about them and you don't include them in your daily stuff or, your holiday stuff or your birthdays because, well, they're not around. All this to say that a service dog is a very, very powerful tool, not just for veterans, but for people with disabilities, behavioral issues, psychological issues. It really gives that person something to hold on to, and gives them something to live for. A lot of our veterans specifically, we like to isolate. We like to shut ourselves up. We don't like to deal with the world. And having that service dog makes us have to go for walks, get dog food, go out and do things with our dog because it's another living creature that needs that, and they survive on that. So for veterans, it's an icebreaker. It's a way for them to get out of their hole, get out of their dark spot. Unfortunately, there's a lot of entitled people out there that see a dog, especially a well-trained dog, in a public setting, and they think that they have the right to go and approach that dog. best thing that I tell people all the time, especially new service dog handlers, is a service dog is a tool. It's no different than a wheelchair or a oxygen tank in the eyes of other people than the handler. You should never approach somebody with a service dog. You should never stare at a person with a service dog. You wouldn't stare at somebody in a wheelchair. Because ultimately that dog, if they get distracted, and trust me, these dogs go through tons and tons and tons of training. And even with that training, they're still a dog. Just like we're human, we make mistakes. A dog is still going to make mistakes. And if you're over there making kissy sounds and trying to lure the dog to you to get attention, eventually that dog is going to make the mistake and it's going to break. So if you see a service dog out in town, whether it's a veteran, whether it's, a child with, an autistic child with a service dog, or maybe a diabetic alert dog, or any of these service dogs that are out there to help people, leave the damn dog alone. Just ignore it. Act like it's not there. Just like when you go buy flowers, you don't have to pick up every flower you see on the yard or on the side of the road. Observe it for what it is and move on. It's just a dog. But to that person, that could be their life. That could be the thing that is keeping them together so they don't become another statistic. So there are different types of service dogs. For veterans, the majority are PTSD. For your general population, you could have anything from a CNI dog, a diabetic alert dog that lets you know when you have high or low blood sugar. Currently, we're training 4 service dogs for veterans that are all probably going to be most likely PTSD dogs. We're also currently training 2 autistic dogs for 2 children. And we've trained a plethora of other dogs for other people. Besides service dogs, you also have ESA, or emotional support animals. Those dogs are specifically for people that have emotional issues or problems. They are not protected underneath the ADA, the American Disabled Association. So an ESA dog is usually somebody that has a dog that needs it for their home, and it provides an emotional support for them if they're having anxiety or panic attacks and things like that. Not necessarily something that's a disability, but something that can be plaguing them. And then you have therapy dogs. Therapy dogs are also not protected under the ADA, but a therapy dog isn't trained for the handler, it's trained for other people. So typically you'll see them in nursing homes, hospitals, schools, and the goal behind a therapy dog is to give emotional support to someone other than the handler. Those dogs have to be specifically trained. They also have to be certified. And more often than not, that handler has to carry some kind of insurance on that dog for what-if situations. An ESA, there's really no requirement other than a letter from a doctor stating that they recommend a ESA for you. And there's no training requirements for it. And this is also why they're not protected by the ADA. And what used to happen is people would take ESA dogs on airplanes and things like that. We started having bite cases. So most airlines now also do not allow ESAs on airplanes. Service dogs, however, are protected by the ADA. There's 2 technical requirements for a service dog. The first one being that you have to have a diagnosed disability from a doctor. And the second one is the dog must be task trained to limit or eliminate the disability for that handler. For service dogs, they're allowed in public. They can go on planes and anywhere that handler goes, unless it's like a surgery in a hospital and it's not a sterile environment or something like that, which would make sense. There's 2 questions that people can ask when the dog is going into public. That is that a service dog? And what task is it trained for? Not what disability do you have, not, what does the dog, do for you? It's what task. And they cannot ask you to demonstrate the task the dog is trained for. They're not supposed to interact with the dog. And if they don't ask those 2 specific questions, you're not obligated to answer any questions other than those 2 questions. Another big misconception as well is that a service dog does not have to wear a vest. More often than not, when you see these vest on dogs, they're fake service dogs, because you can go online and pay $40 and get a service dog certification with an ID card and a vest that says your dog is a service dog. These are not real organizations. These are all scams, and they're meant to evade, more often than not, people that are trying to get their dog into a usually a rental, some kind of thing like that, where they have a breed restriction or a dog restriction. ESAs do fall underneath that you cannot deny an ESA if they actually have a letter, but you can request that letter. As a service dog goes, you cannot request any kind of proof, any kind of documentation or anything like that. Something that's changed recently at the airlines, there is now a form that you have to fill out, and it's more or less a waiver stating you're taking responsibility for the dog, that the dog is a trained dog. It has those 2 questions on it. Your information, your veterinarian's information, just in case something happens to you, they know who to get a hold of to take care of the dog. And that is a federal form that you have to fill out now. So service dogs are very, very powerful. The more you, as an individual that doesn't have a service dog, is trying to interact with someone that has a service dog, not only can you cause problems with the handler, because if you're dealing with somebody who has PTSD and then now you're bringing attention to that person because of their dog, you can cause that person to trigger and cause all kinds of other problems. If that person has anxiety attacks, the person has, some kind of phobia or issue like that. A lot of people that have service dogs have behavioral stuff going on and mental stuff that you bringing attention to their dog causes problems. Most handlers are very polite. They will ask you to ignore the dog or leave the dog alone. And if you ask to pet the dog, they will politely say, no, my dog is a service dog. Please respect that. It takes a lot for a service dog handler to actually go out in public with their dog. They're very scrutinized with all the fake dogs out there nowadays. It's a hard time to be a service dog handler. So respect them, give them their space, ignore the dog, act like it's another piece of equipment, and just move on. For you service dog handlers out there, keep doing it. We know what that dog does for you. And for the fake people out there that are just running around with service dogs in Walmart and other places they're not supposed to, please stop. It makes it so much more difficult for those that have true service dogs to want to go in those places, because the danger your dog puts on their dog. Can't tell you how many stories you read in the news that, a person with a service dog is in a store and a dog off leash comes running up and attacks their dog. That dog can truly be ruined for life if that happens. And the amount of time and money that goes into these dogs, and the bond and the relationship that these handlers make with these service dogs, for you to feel so entitled that you can bring your dog somewhere and it attacks another dog, specifically a service dog, and ruins that dog, is just horrendous. So with all that being said, service dogs are amazing. For the handlers out there that have service dogs, I commend you, because it is not easy. The population does not make it easy on you. Keep doing it. We're excited for these 4 dogs that we have right now that we currently are training for service dogs for veterans. We just found one veteran in Montgomery City that we are going to donate to, Chris, a Gulf War, Desert Storm veteran, Army guy. He's super excited. He's getting one of the black and tan pups. We have 3 more that we're going to be looking for veterans probably in the coming months as we start to actually dive into the service dog training with these dogs. We are very, very blessed to be able to do this. If anybody wants to help, donate food, puppy food, whatever, training equipment, or just some funds, please reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to, help your business or you as an individual help these dogs. If not, no big deal. We will 100% take care of all of it. We're happy to do it. But some people like to reach out and, help our veterans that are in need. With all that being said, guys, day 3, 90-day challenge, service dogs, the power of a service dog. We'll chat with you guys soon.